Hi everyone, I'm just going to hold on one more minute before we get started, just to get a few last people just joining now. So one more minute and then we'll get started. Right, I think everyone has joined now, so we will get going. Okay, good afternoon everyone, and thank you for joining today's Learning Lab on this lovely, we've actually got some sunshine here, so a lovely sunny Thursday. On today's Learning Lab, we are going to be covering, taking you through some of the commonly raised support questions. So before we get started on the session, let me just make some introductions. So for those of you that don't know me, I'm Fiona. I'm part of the customer success team here. And also joining me on today's Learning Lab will be Ash, who is one of our support consultants who I'm sure many of you have met and spoken to previously. All right, just before we get going on the session, I'm also just going to take you through the usual housekeeping. So microphones through the session will be muted. However, there is an opportunity at the end of today's session to ask any questions. So you will be able to take yourself off mute. Also, as it's not a huge, there's not too many attendees in today's session, if you did want to take yourself off mute at any time through the session and ask a question, more than happy for you to do that too. Also, there is a question box in the webinar panel, which is on the right hand side of your screen. If you do have any questions as we go along and you prefer not to take yourself off mute and ask, you can pop any questions in the question panel box and I will read those out at the end. Okay, also today's session is recorded, so a copy of the recording will be sent to you after the session is finished. Please feel free to share that with any colleagues who was unable to make today, if you think it will be useful for those. Great. Okay, I think that's all of the housekeeping done. Hopefully I haven't forgotten anything. So let's get started with today's agenda. So the agenda for today's session is I'll be taking you through creating users, how you create new users, and how you manage their access. And then Ashley's going to be taking us through the approval process. She's then going to take us through troubleshooting some of those data imports, bank feeds and how we reconcile and go through bank feeding. Then I'm going to be taking you through creating a dashboard to look at what periods are open and closed. And then finally, I'll finish up with just what resources are available out there with the Intacct help and support. Okay. So let's get started. So first of all, we're talking about creating new users. So before you can go ahead and create a new user, there are a few considerations that you need to be aware of. Firstly, only a full business user or the admin user will be able to create new users. Okay, so the administrator will have the admin permissions to be able to do that. Then also your administrator will manage the users and the permissions and access for the new users that are created. There are a couple of different types of users you need to be aware of. So you need to understand what level of permissions your new user is going to need. So for example, there are business users, which gives them full access to the system, but can also be restricted by permissions. There is an employee user type license, which just gives access for viewing mainly information, or they can approve purchase orders, time expenses. And then you have the warehouse and PM users, which are kind of in the middle. So they don't have as much access as a business user, but not quite as limited as an employee user either. You also need to be aware that there are charges applied for different types of licenses. So if you're unsure of if you've got any free licenses around, please do reach out to your customer success manager, and myself or Claudia will be able to let you know if you have any free licenses that you can use up or what costs are involved in creating new users. Okay, so let me just try and switch my screens around now to show you where you'd need to go to create that new user. Okay, bear with me. So you should now be able to see my screen. So this is just a demo environment that we quite often use for learning labs. Okay, so to create a new user, you need to go to the company menu and you're looking into the admin tab and you'll find users. In here is a list of all your current users and it will tell you what type of user type they are. So there's the business user license that I was talking about, which gives you full access to the whole system. And then you've got some employee user licenses, which are very limited, very restricted type licenses. And then there's a project manager and a warehouse, which are kind of in the middle. To create a new user, you'd come in here, you'd click on add. You'd enter all of the information regarding that user. You can pop in a contact name, and down here is where you select what type of license or what type of user they are going to be. If they are a business user, you may have business users that need to do a lot within the system but aren't able to change permissions, create new users, that kind of thing. So their admin privileges would be off rather than an admin user would have full admin privileges. Okay. So once you've created your new user, just click on save in here and you'll be asked to confirm with the password and then your user will get added to the list. There's also, you may need to come into this place if someone has forgotten their password and you need to reset it. So find your user in the list, click on edit, and you can come in here and you'll find if they've been locked out, their status will be locked out. If they've forgotten their password and they've re-entered it a number of times and it's been incorrect, they'll be locked out. So you need to just come in here, set them back to active, and then hit save, and you'll be asked to reissue your password to confirm that you've reactivated them. And lastly, to just show you in here, the last thing you'll need to do in here when it comes to managing your users is deactivating users. So if someone has left the business or they're no longer working on Intacct, or maybe they've moved into a different department, you'll need to deactivate them. You can't delete a user unless it's a user that you've created that has never logged in. As soon as that user has logged in, they cannot be deleted from the system. You have to then deactivate them. And that also holds on to all of their audit history of what they've done in the system. So we want to keep them in the system to know what they've done within the system previously, but we don't want to delete them. So to inactivate a user, and then that user gets removed from your licensing numbers as well, you would just come into here, find the user, click on edit, and you would change their status to inactive. It's as simple as that. Okay, and then once you've created that, then just hit save. Okay, right, I think the next slide for me is, if I just pop back to the PowerPoint. I think the next slide is over to Ash, just about inactivating users, is for the approval. So over to you, Ash. I will stop sharing my screen and make you presenter so you can share yours. Okay, Ash, you there?
Yes, just one moment, Fiona.
No problem at all.
There we go. Good. Thank you, Fiona, and good afternoon, everyone. So I will be taking you through a couple more areas that is commonly raised within support, starting with approvals or the approval workflow. So all businesses has their own level of approvals or approval policies. Many a times there are holdups in the workflow due to transactions not being approved. Most common questions around this area is, how do I see where my transaction is in the workflow, or where do I go to approve, or who's the transaction waiting for to be approved by, and why am I not receiving notifications that there are transactions waiting for my approval? Starting with, how do I see where my PO is in the workflow? So if you go to your transactions list view, whether you are approving purchase or sales orders, whether it's invoices or payments you're approving, you will go to that transaction list view. So each transaction will have a state. This will determine where in the approval workflow it sits. So when we're viewing the submitted state, this is basically the transaction is awaiting approval. So by this point, an email notification should have already been sent to the user to notify them that there is that the transaction is awaiting the approval. If the state is pending, the transaction has already been approved and can now be converted to the next stage. And then declined is the approver has declined the transaction, and the submitter or the user that's posted the transaction will need to make the necessary changes and resubmit for approval. How do I approve a transaction? So to approve your transactions, your purchase transactions, you will navigate to the purchasing module, and you'll go to approve transactions. So in the list of approved transactions is where you will see all transactions that requires your approval. As a unrestricted approver, or if you are set as an unrestricted approver, which can only be an admin user, you will see all transactions that requires approval. And then how do I approve a transactions? So once you go into your list of approved transactions, this will all be listed, and you can go ahead and either approve or decline, and you can pop in a little note as to why you are declining or what changes the submitter needs to make before resubmitting. If a transaction requires more than one approver, you can view the approval history of the transaction to see who has approved and who else needs to approve. So when viewing the transaction, you can revert to the history tab and click on approval history. This will then give you a breakdown of the users or approvers that needs to approve and where in the process this sits. Okay, so once you've clicked on approval history, you will see all the levels of approver. Each level has a state, and this will determine who it's with and where it's heading. So if it has a state of submitted, this means that the approval is in the list of the approved or the listed approver. Pending approval, this is the next approver in the workflow. So once the first approver approves, the second state will change to submitted, as that's who the transaction is with. Okay, so to ensure you are receiving approval notifications, you can check that this is enabled in the user preferences. If you are an admin user, you can update the preferences for any other or all other users by navigating to the user and clicking on preferences besides the appropriate user. So once you've gone into preferences, you can tick the checkbox to receive checklist notifications. That is basically just to enable you to receive notifications. And then request for approval, you will tick the checkbox of the area or the transactions that you need to approve. So if you are approving purchasing, you tick that checkbox. If you're approving journals or payments, you will tick the relevant checkbox to ensure you receive the email notifications. Next. Individual users can then update their own preferences simply by clicking on their name, which is found in the right-hand corner of the screen. This will then bring them to their preferences screen where they can enable email notifications. When an approver is on holiday or goes on holiday, they can simply set delegate approvals to ensure that approval responsibilities are processed during their absence. Using approval delegates also ensures that transactions submitted for approval keeps moving through the approval process even though they are away. And then to set up approval delegates, you'll first enable delegates within the purchasing module. Within configuration, and then assign approval delegates. Turning on and configuring approval delegation gives all approvers the ability to set themselves out of office for purchase approvals. And while an approver is set out of office, Sage Intacct will then automatically reroute new approval requests to their assigned delegate. This delegate will then assume responsibility for all approval requests until the approver returns and turns off the out of office for purchasing approvals. So only users with approval purchase transaction permissions appear in this list. So you will set a default delegate that is used to, this will automate the user selected as the default will automatically populate in the delegate field for each approver. And this also acts as the delegate for any new approvals. You can always go back in and change it to a different delegate if need. And then in the approver list, every approver with approved purchase transaction permissions will appear in this table. It is important to note that if you are an approver and you have any restrictions against your user records, such as entity restrictions or department restrictions, you will not be able to set a delegate for yourself. And then in the delegate field, a user who can approve the delegate is basically the user who can approve on your behalf or on the behalf of the approver. And again, only users with the relevant permissions will appear in this list. And then when the approver turns on the out of office approval delegations, again, this gets routed to the delegate. Setting out of office. So to set you out of office, you can click on the login name in the corner, top right hand corner, which is my preferences. And then in the approval section, you will simply just tick the checkbox, which will then set your delegate as the new approver. Once you return, you can just go back to your preferences and untick this option, which will route the transactions back to the original approver. There are often times when someone goes away on holiday and they have failed to set the out of office. If this is the case, any transactions will be stuck in the list of this approver until they return. Alternatively, you have, or the admin user have, an option to set a unrestricted approver, which will then give them the visibility of viewing all transactions that requires approvals. Moving on to troubleshooting imports. So there are, Intacct does recommend a guideline to avoid common import errors, which is to remove spaces from your data. So all trailing spaces can cause an upload error. So in certain fields, such as the memo or description fields, be sure that there aren't any spaces at the beginning or the end of the memo field, because this could also cause the upload to fail. Make sure the headers match the template file. So headers are mapped to the fields within Intacct. So changing the headers means that your data will not populate or upload to the correct fields within Intacct. Verify ID field references. Make sure that all headers in your file exactly match the headers in the download template, and it's recommended to not change the content of the header. And then to make sure that reference items exist in Intacct. So all field IDs must exist in Intacct. If you are referencing suppliers or customers, terms, budgets, etc., whatever you're referencing in your upload file must already exist within Intacct. And then once you have imported your data, you will receive an email notification whether this is successful or unsuccessful. If the import was unsuccessful, you'll get a notification. The email notification will usually state how many entries were imported successfully or how many entries had errors. There are instances where there may be valid transactions, but it hasn't imported. In this case, the email will list the entries that had errors. So, and also if you scroll further down on the notification or the email that you received, it will usually give you a short description of what the error relates to. Some of you must have come across this before. Some best practices when importing. If you are unable to identify the upload error, we recommend downloading a new template. So you can upload in data into various different areas of Intacct. Oftentimes the file could be corrupted. This is often the case when you are importing bank transactions. So we usually suggest to download a brand new template and just copy the data over. And then another best practice is once you've saved, or when you are saving your upload file, to save it as CSV, as that is the acceptable file to save. And then use the template headers. Template headers in the second row of your upload file, there's usually a description of what the length is of the file, because you could get an error if you are entering more characters that is allowed. So this gives you a short description of what is required fields or what is valid fields. Okay, import results and outcomes. So we all always hope for a successful upload, but there are cases where this is not the case. So upload errors is usually to do with formats, unwanted commas or characters, spaces, reference items that isn't referenced in Intacct. As mentioned previously, so once the necessary changes has been made, you can then go ahead and re-upload the file. And sometimes it can become a bit tricky, or the email notification isn't very clear. We always suggest to just log a case with support, and we usually go through these very troubleshooting points to make sure that the file is acceptable as an import. Moving on to bank feeds. So bank feeds, there has been some discourse around bank feeds lately, especially regarding late transactions. Oftentimes transactions are just simply delayed. This is to be expected. It is known that bank transactions appear in Intacct the business day after they are posted to the bank. So as support, there isn't really a solution that we can provide to speed up the process, but there are points that we can take to check what the reason is for the delays or any missing transactions. So if you are experiencing transaction delays, or if your bank feed has stopped, we would firstly check the bank feed connections. So once you go into your bank account, you can go and edit or view. Common statuses are, once it's connected, we know the account should be bringing in new bank feeds. Auth required, this is a common status. Some banks require you to reauthorize your bank feed connections before you can receive new bank transactions. This is just a security process that some banks has in place. And once you've reauthorized and the bank has confirmed the authorization, and then this will then bring in new transactions. If you are missing transactions, this could again be due to the bank needing to be reauthorized. If it is that your bank feed status is reauth, you then need to edit your bank account and click on reauthorize. Once you've reauthorized the account, the state will change to auth confirming. This is just waiting on the bank to confirm the authorization. If your bank account is connected and you're still missing transactions, you can go ahead and refresh. Although refreshing the bank account doesn't necessarily bring in any current day transactions, it could just speed up bringing in previous day transactions. If it is the case that you are missing transactions, we recommend not to disconnect at this time. If you do need to complete a bank reconciliation, we do then suggest completing the recon by importing those missing bank transactions. And then with regards to bank feed refresh, and common questions around refreshing. So your bank is automatically refreshes every 4 hours in the background. Manual refreshes only fetches transactions that were posted from the previous day. I know a lot of customers expect once you refresh, it just brings in everything that is expected. That is not always the case, but it does help bring in any missing transactions. And then when do transactions appear in Intacct? So transactions typically appear in Intacct the business day after they post to the bank. Transactions can also take up to 3 business days for transactions to appear. And like I said before, that the speed for this is out of our control. So usually if it has been more than 3 days, we will go ahead and log it with Sage to raise it with their banking team. And normally before we get a response, then those bank fee transactions has already updated. But it's important to note that if you are missing transactions, you have an option which is more of a workaround to import your transactions or do a manual refresh or a manual bank rec. Okay, that is all from me. Fiona, are you going to finish up with close period reviews?
I will do, yeah. Thank you, Ash.
Okay.
Do you want to change
Yes.
center? Okay, we just switch screens around. Fingers crossed you are seeing my close period review. Yep. Can you see that, Ash? Can you see my?
Yes.
Oh, perfect. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay. Yes. So, close period review. So, another common question that comes up in support is someone's trying to post transactions and they're unable to. They get a message saying that the period is closed or posting into the incorrect period. Or you're trying to submit VAT and you need to ensure that your period and all of your ledgers are closed first. And especially if you're a multi-entity company, it can take quite a lot of time. It can take quite some time to go through each of the entities and each of the ledgers and ensure what's closed. So there is a way you can create a list and pop that list on a dashboard to see what periods are closed up to when on what entities. So I'm just going to talk you through now how to create that dashboard. Okay, let me just pop back into the demo. So you should be able to see my demo site now. So to create that dashboard, we're going to go up to company, into dashboards, and we're going to click on dashboards. And we're going to hit add in here. So we're going to give the dashboard a name. I'm just going to call this period by entity. Okay. And really, that's all you need to do at this stage. Under permissions, if you're only wishing to share this between yourself and a couple of colleagues or just for yourself, then under permissions, you can set whether this is to deny everyone access to it. You can specify a specific user that you want to have access to. To this. Sorry, trying to do two things at once here. So select a specific user that you want access to the dashboard, or you can select a group of people, or you can deny everyone and just have it for yourself. So I just remove Claudia out there. And leave that and hit save. Okay, so once you've created your dashboard, if you just find it in the list, there we go, there's my dashboard. And then the next step is to select view components. Okay, and there's no components added to my dashboard at the moment, so to add that I'm going to hit on the plus, and because we want to see the periods, the component type will be general and the component will be closed through summary. If you are just a single entity, then the summary view will be absolutely fine for you. However, if you're a multi-entity company and you want to see the period dates for all the subledgers against all of the entities, then you'll need to select entity view. And if we just hit save there, so that's now been added to my dashboard. I can see there by entity, each of the ledgers and the subledgers and what date they're all closed through to. And if I scroll through, I can see the different entities. Okay. And it's as simple as that and easy as that. Also, if you have a dashboard already created and you want to add this feature to an existing dashboard, it's a very similar process. So you come out, you'd go into dashboard. So if I just select this general one here, I'm just going to pick this one for an example. To add the month enclosure to any existing dashboard is click on the plus to add the component. And then under component, you want the closed through summary. And again, select if it's just single entity, summary view. And if it's a multi-entity, then entity view. Save, and that will then get added to the bottom of this existing dashboard. And it's as simple as that. Super. Okay. Let me pop back to the PowerPoint. And lastly, the last thing I'm going to take you through on this learning lab is just to show you really what resources are available within Sage Intacct. So there is a lot of help and assistance provided by Sage Intacct, and it's accessible from within the system at any time, really. You've got the help and support in the help centre there. You've also got the Sage Intacct community, and you've also got the Sage University, so learning courses. available. The nice thing about the Help Centre is, and it's available at any time within Intacct, is if you need help on a specific page that you're working on, then by going into, let me just pop back to my demo so I can just quickly show you. If you're working on any specific page and you need specific assistance on that page, by going to help and support and selecting help on this page will open up a new browser so you can continue working in the background, but it will take you directly to help on that specific page. Okay. If it's more general information that you're looking for, then by going up to help and support and going into the Help Centre, again, it opens up in a new browser so you can continue working in the background. But it takes you into the Help Centre where you can have a look for more information, or you can drill it down by module. So let me just give you a quick overview of that. So bear with me, sorry. In the menus at the top here, you get access to many more resources. So the Getting Started, for example, is great for new users or users that don't often use the system. There's some quick reads in here. There's some short training videos. There's information such as like customizing your workspace under the personal preferences. You can change your screen layouts, such as like the way that your menus are displayed, so to make it easier for specific users to find their way around. So for example, those employee users which have a limited access, they may want to just move around what they'll need to be using in the system on those menus. You can change your start pages, you can change preferences such as when you tab through fields on a screen rather than selecting enter. So it's a really nice way just to give you show you around your personal preferences and how to make changes in there. Under applications, so if you're looking for information on specific modules under applications, it's all laid out for you by the module, and you can drill down into the actual module and get further information. Under reporting, you can get information on how to create reports. You can understand the reports and the types of reports that can be generated. There's also in the reporting basics there's a link to exploring reporting solutions where you can look at different ways to organize your reports. There's a video library which will show you different videos on how to organize your reports. If you're a system administrator, you may need more assistance. You may want more information, on creating users, the type of permissions available for users, the different environments, roles that can be applied to users. So even though a business user can have access to everywhere, you might want to limit their role on what it is they can actually do within the system. So lots of information available within the Help Centre. You've also got, what I really like is this video library down here. So the video library is full of videos ranging from, they all range from around 3 to 15 minutes. They're organised by modules, so it's easily to work out exactly, to try and find, what video it is you're looking for. Each video will give you a little bit of information about what it's going to cover. Some of the terminology used in these videos can be a bit US based and might not always be clear what it is they're referring to. But if you go under Get Started and look at the terminology across locales, that will break it down for you. So where they speak about bill, we know that in the UK that actually is referring to an invoice. So looking at the terminology across locales will just let you know what some of the terms they're referring to in the videos are for. Okay. Also from within the Help Centre, you can access the Sage University. So the Sage University, it's in here under training, the Sage University, where you have around 200 complementary courses, and those courses range from anywhere from 30 minutes to 5 days. You can also access the Sage University from within Intacct by going into Help and About. You've got the Sage University in here. Let's go back to the Help Centre. So under training, you've got Sage University. So any courses that you download through the Sage University are tracked through a learning pathway and let you know how you've progressed through the course, anything you need to go back and recover, or you get a certificate at the end of it as well, and it's all tracked and logged through the Sage Uni portal. Like I said, there's about 200 complementary courses, but you can, if you wanted further and more in-depth courses, those are available on the Sage Learning membership. So if you are interested in that, please reach out to myself or Claudia and we can give you some more information on that and what costs are involved. And lastly, from the Sage University, from the Sage Help Centre is the community, which is a great place to connect with other Intacct users from across the world. You can join webinars, you can join chat rooms. Also in the Sage University, you can look at what ideas and wish list items have been raised from other users. If you think they're really good, you can vote on them. You can also raise and create your own in there and vote on them, because the more votes an idea receives, the more priority and consideration it's given when looking at when Sage come to look at their next releases and what's included. You can also view as well any release notes of previous releases that have come out, and also take a look at release notes when the next release is due. They usually come out about 3 to 4 days before the release is due out, so you can get a pre-look there of what's coming up. So yeah, lots of resources available in Sage Intacct, and also you know where Acuity support is should you need any further assistance. Okay, I think that's everything from me. Let me just pop you back to the PowerPoint. I will now just put myself on mute for a minute and let any questions come through. So like I said at the start, pop any questions you have in the question box, or feel free to take yourself off mute and ask away. So we'll just give that a moment. Okay, I don't think there's any questions coming through at the moment. However, should something come to you after this session, then my email address is on the screen now, or you can reach out to myself, or you can contact the support team for any questions that pop up later on, or that come from the team once you've shared this session. If you do have any feedback from today's session, or if you have something specific that you would like to see on a learning lab, then please do let us know. We really do welcome any feedback. That's all from me. Our next learning lab will be on the 31st of October, and we'll be taking you through we'll be demoing the AP automation feature that was recently released in Intacct. So look forward to you joining us on that. Should be a very interesting session. That's all from us. So I hope you found today's session useful. Thanks again for your time, and look forward to seeing you on the next learning lab. Thanks everybody. Bye.